I'm going to call the Thursday, October 7th, 2021 Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yep,
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve it?
so moved.
Thanks, Glenn. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, comments from the public. Lucille, are there comments from the public?
Yes, there are.
Okay, before you start, I just need to do the, my usual speech, which is that public comments are each limited to 2 minutes, for a total of 15 minutes on any one topic. And as frustrating as it might be, the board will not respond directly. Instead, we listen carefully, and if it's appropriate, there'll be follow-up, most likely by the superintendent and/or his staff, if appropriate. Okay, Lucille, go ahead.
Okay, the first public comment is from Linda DiMatteo Delpine. Good day. I have to say that the recent statement from the board and its associates regarding parents needing to be vaccinated to enter the school and participate in their children's school life is absurd, asinine, anti-science, and frankly arrogant. People have many reasons to decline the shot, which science has shown does not prevent COVID or the spread of it. In fact, does the opposite by contributing to the spread. Below is a link to an obituary of a 37-year-old mother who was pushed into getting the vaccine so she could be room mom. She is now dead. Let me ask you, will you take responsibility for the children whose parents died from the COVID shot because they were forced into getting it so they could volunteer at their children's schools? The science shows people who have had COVID have much stronger antibodies than the vaccine-induced antibodies, and those people react much more adversely to the shot. I have had COVID and I have the document to prove my antibodies. Why would I or anybody else in my situation need the shot knowing it could kill me since I have the antibodies already? It's okay for high schoolers to protest about abortion and my body, my choice, but not okay for parents to say the same when it comes to injecting a drug, which, by the way, doesn't even have an insert of ingredients. It is blank. We have our own rights to determine our own medical care for ourselves and our children. I can't believe this needs to be said. Below are some links to studies proving natural immunity is stronger and breakthrough cases are rampant. The shot is not 100% effective, and it carries extreme health consequences, such as death. Therefore, it is against the Nuremberg Code to mandate these to anyone, especially parents whose children need them alive. Where there is risk, there should be choice. I am more than happy to submit my proof of antibodies. There should be options and exemptions allowed. And then there's a bunch of links.
Okay, thank you.
The next comment is from Andrew Warren, 266 Mountain Road, Wilton. Good evening. I am writing to communicate my opposition to your recent announcement that only vaccinated visitors may enter Wilton Public Schools. In addition to this policy being discriminatory, the policy clearly ignores science as well as one's right to keep their personal health choices private. There are numerous studies which show that people with COVID antibodies are much less susceptible to getting COVID than those that are vaccinated. Additionally, there are numerous well-documented cases of severe adverse effects from the vaccine, including death. The Wilton Public Schools are just that, public. They are funded by our tax dollars. For you to say that we cannot visit our children on campus for school activities if we do not have a vaccine that you think is necessary or show proof of a negative test is absurd. It is ironic that we are talking about education when the school board is clearly uneducated on the vaccine, mask wearing, and COVID. In addition to this requirement that we must be vaccinated to participate in our children's school activities on campus, the continued requirement for masks while on campus is also absurd. Our kids spent all summer without masks. They continue to not wear masks when they are out of school, in sports, and at other events. But when they are at school, you require them to wear masks. To see children of our school board members over the summer and around town not wearing masks, but then having their parents mandate masks for our kids when they are in school is very disappointing, and quite frankly is exactly why most people think so negatively of elected officials today. It shows me that the school board is not about ensuring that our children have the best education, but rather dictating policy, I'm sorry, hot, but rather dictating policy that they think others should follow. I ask that you not discriminate against those that make a personal health decision not to be vaccinated, and that our children be allowed to attend school not wearing masks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, there's one more.
Oh, okay.
The next one is from Sarah Hutton. My body, my choice. I am against Wilton BOE's decision to mandate a shot for me to enter my child's school. It goes against everything that I believe in, and I shouldn't be medically segregated for my beliefs. Each day, reliable and well-documented studies are surfacing about the side effects from these shots. A story from a Pfizer employee released October 7th, 2021, has just informed the public that they used an aborted fetus to test the shots, article number 1 below. I do not agree with it, nor do I want it anywhere near my body. Pharmaceutical companies have not been transparent about what is actually in these shots. Brave employees from multiple companies that produce the vaccine are coming forward to stand up for what is right and expose the truth. A mother last month died from the vaccine. She was mandated to take the shot against her will, and now she is gone. Who will take her place and raise her children? Who will be liable for me if something happens to me after I take the shot that you are forcing upon me to enter the public school that I pay taxes for my child to attend? None of these rules or regulations make sense because they contradict each other all the time. I can attend a public Board of Education meeting in person without vaccination or COVID testing, but I can't go inside my child's school without a vaccine. Meanwhile, none of the children inside that public school are vaccinated. This goes beyond common sense, and one starts to question why. Fully vaccinated individuals can still catch and transmit COVID to others. We can all still get COVID and spread it. Individuals who have antibodies are proven to be more protected than those that have received the shot. And while we are on the subject, unmask our children who are not at risk. Their mental health is being affected. Small children need to see emotions on a teacher's and friends' faces. A newborn infant will die without physical or emotional touch from a caregiver. This is child abuse. My daughter tells me all the time that she can't touch her friends, and the rules are that she can't enter into anyone's personal space bubble. She puts her hands out and says that no one can get near her. She explains that she will get in trouble if she holds a friend's hand or gets too close to someone. This is sick and cruel treatment for our children. You all should be ashamed of yourselves for allowing this to happen. Our children need hugs and comfort from their teachers and friends, and you are saying that this isn't allowed. Childhood anxiety is through the roof. Suicide rates among children have skyrocketed, and this isn't their burden to carry any longer. And again, there's 3 different links included in this email.
Thank you. Okay, we have our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Mandy. Second?
A second.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to reports. The board chair's report will be very short tonight, but also very happy. Our superintendent has received deserved recognition. I just want to read a letter from the American Association of School Librarians. On behalf of the American Association of School Librarians and the Distinguished School Administrator Award Subcommittee, it gives us great pleasure to inform you that you, Dr. Smith, have been selected as the recipient of the 2020 American Association of School Librarians Distinguished School Administrator Award. You were nominated by Fran Hompar. The Distinguished School Administrator Award honors an administrator who, through individual leadership and sustained effort, has made significant contributions to the operations of effective school library services and to advancing the role of the school library in the educational program. So we're really happy that Dr. Smith not only got this award, but a year later has the opportunity to receive it in person. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's my report.
Thanks. All right. Well, good evening. I have also just a brief report. When we meet again in November, we'll have a comprehensive school improvement plan update from the principals, from Chuck. At that point, I expect we'll have some data to share. But I did want to just give you a brief overview of where we've come from the last couple of weeks. So across the district, in every building, the accelerated learning framework and SIP plans have now been shared through ILs with staff. In the lower schools, data workbooks have been developed and shared. In the grades where we administer the MAP assessment, that's been completed. We did that earlier this year than we have in previous years. Again, all part of benchmarking so we can really identify kids and begin the intervention process. Here at the high school, the PSAT will be administered on October 13th. Both at Middlebrook and the high school, the IETs are meeting and establishing their data review practices. For some, that's a new practice, so they've had professional learning support and will get additional professional learning support as they engage more deeply. The Middlebrook teams are engaged and looking at IABs and then working out the plans where and when they're going to use them. And then Bob also noted in his update to me that the data review process is in place in the math department at the high school. They received some training from CES. And then teachers in that department have also administered their first CFA and are in the process of beginning to review results. Our interventionists, as you know, we hired and are continuing search for part-time interventionists. So the ones we have in place have begun to both push into IETs, work in classrooms, and identify kids to begin to provide that support. And then the last little piece here is Chuck, Andre, and I will be scheduling ourselves regularly into buildings to work with the administrators and their leadership teams to review data and provide technical support. And then just today, kind of on the note here, I was over at Miller Driscoll this afternoon and had an opportunity to attend first grade IET, and that was great. And so while they weren't yet looking at academic data, what they were doing was reviewing the SRBI and social emotional learning practices we have for those students. So Elena White facilitated that meeting. She shared a wealth of information with that group of teachers, first on executive functioning, and then some kind of elevated anxiety look-fors. She shared data monitoring checklists that they can use in their classrooms, as well as reviewed the tiered response we have, and then just outlaid for them the different structures that will be in place to support them as they're working with their students this year. So she was terrific. The teachers were obviously invested in the practice, and so that's what we're seeing as we roam around all of our schools this year. We have teachers who are really committed to advancing and promoting the growth and achievement and supporting all of our kids. So that's another kind of on-the-ground update, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. I'm not sure too many committees met.
No. This is
Unless I
us.
missed one,
We're
right?
not.
We didn't,
No.
okay. Teaching and learning, okay. Policy?
We did meet. We further discussed the policy on health assessments and immunizations, and also bullying prevention and intervention. And we discussed them in relation to changes needed to conform with various statutes and legislative changes that have occurred.
Okay.
And we also starting to do a comprehensive policy review. To look at, create a priority order process for other policies that have been affected by legislative changes. And we continued our discussion on DEI and policy formation, and goals and objectives of that policy.
Thank you.
There were a significant amount of legislative actions.
There were.
It-
And they intersect many policies.
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing what we now have to go through
Yeah.
to ensure compliance. I was shocked at the amount of regulation and change. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, the Teaching and Learning Committee, as well as the Policy and Communications Committee, will not be out of work anytime soon.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I don't know. I was really amazed. It was a great recap that attorney sent us. And pretty comprehensive, but it's mind-boggling what we now have to go through to kind of ensure that we're in compliance. Of course, I don't think they left any stone unturned.
Well, I think there's, remember this at budget time when we talk about unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
Because what they didn't do was extend the day, provide more professional learning time,
Yep.
provide additional resources for curriculum support, and yet those are all activities we have to further engage.
Yeah, it was really amazing. But anyway.
Okay.
Kevin, quick question. I just got a text from 2 people who say that Zoom link is not working. Is there
The-
any way to check that?
We can have Lucille check it.
I have Skip actually looking at it right now, and I'm asking her to pop up, just because I noticed attendance was low,
Okay.
so.
Okay, where are we? Financial report. I can't hear you.
Well, it's not working.
All right, Ann, just wait, we can't hear you quite yet. That button I said turn off, and you should turn. Can
Yeah.
you, all right,
Hey, Ann, can you just say hello, see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
Remember this
Just
concept.
on the phone, the cell phone ad. So you have September, the draft September in front of you. Am I hearing the echo, or is anyone else hearing the echo?
The audio in the room is strange tonight for some reason. We're hearing you out of the smart board, but not out of the speakers.
Okay.
We'll just manage it as best we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'll make it quick.
It's like presenting in the Grand Canyon.
September draft is in front of you, so we're 3 months into the fiscal year, and we're 1 month into the school starting back up. We have some pluses and minuses, and thankfully we have the pluses. The first one would be our OPEB and pension actuarial numbers came in significantly lower than what we budgeted, and that was because of the return on those trust funds. So the value is higher, so the liability goes down. So thankfully, we have the savings because we did have repairs that were scheduled and budgeted for on the elevator in the high school, but we had some additional repairs that once we started it, that we needed to continue. So we used the savings, some of the savings from that to cover those repairs. We also had a couple of different changes instead between in-district and out-of-district. So there was changes in between, but not major increases, just changes in categories in the budget classification. And one of the main ones you'll see on the tax rate, which is on the last page, we didn't go out for a lease for some of the items that we were looking for. So the dollar amount that was budgeted for that lease were transferred to equipment because there was 4 or 5 different items that IT was looking to purchase. And those dollars were changed over there for those purchases to go ahead. We've also been working at any additional savings to build up the budget for Chromebooks. We can buy Chromebooks in advance. So that's a priority for us too, so that we can make sure that at the beginning of next year, Eric and his team can start looking forward to getting the Chromebooks for the following year, so we're not behind. There's the main items right now. What we're waiting for is another month of the salary because I did have some emails that the HR department is working diligently with different positions and making everything built. And once everything is in place there, we will know then at that point, mapping out salaries through the end of the year to see if there's any savings or surprises in that category. So I don't think it's any questions.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of questions, if I may. And the telephone line, our budget for the year is $166,000. And we've already encumbered and spent $127,000. I would have thought that would be a straight line monthly occurrence. So I'm concerned about why all of a sudden we've got $127,000 against a year-to-date budget, a yearly budget of $166,000.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we have spent 27 to date,
Right.
and the 100 is encumbering for the rest of the year.
Okay, so then is that the balance for the year then? Okay, all right, so
Yeah,
we will,
I'm sorry, in the year-to-date encumbrance,
Yeah, right.
what the different areas do, the different schools, the districts and utilities, we go based on our estimates of the year before.
Okay.
On what we think, so we encumber the funds to make sure those funds are there and in place.
Okay.
And not touched.
Okay.
And that's what that column means.
okay, yeah. And rental of facilities, we've got year-to-date $97,000, which is combined encumbrance and transactions, against a budget of $27,000. What are we spending $100,000 on to rent?
Different classifications of it. It's rental income coming in, plus it's also expenditures of other items that we're renting. So it is a net number, so once the revenue starts coming in, you'll start seeing those expenditure numbers coming down.
Okay. The pre-K tuition, I would have thought we've got more pre-K students than we ever anticipated having, but we are well below our income level for the year. And I would have thought, is tuition paid up front annually, or is it paid monthly, or how?
No, is it paid twice a year?
That's what it's twice a year, that's what I'm gonna say. So we don't have the second yet, which based on our current numbers, we'll hit it, plus we'll see, because also some of the, Andrea, you can correct me if I'm wrong, some of the children will age in over the year. So we'll have more, even though they pay twice a year, we'll have more children that may come in during the year, which will also come in at the point of enrollment.
Okay, all right. And then the private tuition is already, with the encumbrance, almost $800,000 over budget.
If you remember, we cannot budget excess costs.
Well, I know that,
Reimbursement from the
right,
state.
right.
So that line will show an over budget because we will spend X amount of dollars because the revenue's gonna come, the first part, usually 70% of the 70% we get will come in sometime in January. So we will start we are over budget in that line because of that purpose, because we can't budget those savings. So we'll show it, and until I get that first installment in January, I don't like to put the revenue against it yet.
Okay,
We manage that line.
okay, okay. So, all right, okay, thank you for that. I've got other questions on the the year end too.
Okay.
So, is Ann going to take us through?
Yeah, do you want to go through
Do you want
the,
to go through some of the grants?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't have that on my item.
Oh, okay.
Well, what
So-
about year end? Can we
How
talk
about year
a
end
little?
then?
yeah, and why don't you, if you take them through the year-end report, then I can summarize the grants.
Yes, my apologies. I thought it was just the financials for September. That's my fault. I thought the year-end financials were addressed. So we ended up with a surplus of approximately $346 at the end of fiscal year '21. With the freeze that we put in place, the various grants that we got during the year, we were able to cover everything that we needed from an educational standpoint and the safety standpoint. Then we waited to closer to the end to see what we had to make sure that whatever else that we need at that point, we encumbered for some Chromebooks, we did some small encumbrance on it. But I would have to give credit to the whole district that they were able to cover, with everything that everybody did, we were able to cover all the expenses related to COVID, all the construction, all the masks, all those things that we didn't get 100% funded back from either FEMA or the state. We got it all covered and then still came in with $300 surplus. So I'm trying to think offhand the main line items, that, you know, as you can imagine, transportation was down, transportation for athletics, the athletic program, training and conferences, supplies, were some of the main areas of where we had the savings, because we just either didn't have need for the supplies at the time when we were on remote, and obviously the training and conferences, we couldn't go anywhere at that point. Trying to think, was there anything major?
Well,
There
it
was,
probably goes to my question, because in both, in textbooks and workbooks and library books and catalogs, we were well below our budget. And maybe that's part of what you're talking about when we
yes, that's
froze.
what the line, well, some of them we switched.
Yeah.
Some of them were kind of a switch, because we didn't get the hard copy books that we would normally purchase, but we had to get licensed for ebooks and all other types of digital related books and items that were needed. So there was a switch in some aspects for that,
Okay.
because of what we needed to switch from a remote perspective to make sure they had it.
Right.
So we had a lot more licensing and digital that we had to purchase.
All right. The other question I have is, in the rental of facilities, we had an income line budgeted for 18,000, but we ended up spending 90,000. I don't understand that.
Again, well, I probably should bring some of it in, because it's the rental of property and the leasing of property, we also lease property. So we lease the ice rink, we had contracts in place, we may not have been using it, but we had contracts. So we rent places as well, that's a net number that's going in there between the rental of properties of the income received and the rental of properties that we actually undertake.
Yeah, but we blew it because we had income projected at 18,000 in the budget, but we spent 90,000. That's a $100,000 swing, and that's a pretty big swing.
Right, because, well, we didn't get any of the income coming in because we didn't rent anything, but we had contracts that we were liable, that we had to pay it on, even though we may not have been using them.
Okay.
Does that include trackside? Is trackside in there?
Trackside, I believe, could be in there. I'd have to look it up in the system. and I
That would
can get
have been
back to
50
you.
of the 90. That's about what we paid last year.
And then we came in well under equipment repair and maintenance, and I just caution, were the things that we just chose not to do, that we should have done, that we had planned to do, we just didn't do it, because we came in well under budget.
There was a lot of items we couldn't do. We just couldn't do it because of COVID and different things, whether it was we couldn't get the supplies, whether it was the timing. So anything we had to do, we put in place to get done.
Okay.
We made sure if the request was coming up, we made sure it was addressed. So, but there were things we just couldn't do.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I just have to remember the year that we came through last year.
Yeah, I know. It was a crazy year. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And one last question. The excess cost, was that about what you had anticipated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That came in where
They're
you,
keeping within the 1.3, 1.4 has been what we've been getting the last couple of years.
okay.
So that's what, it came in again.
Okay, great. So that wasn't a surprise. All right.
And is that still about 70%?
Yes. Actually, I think it's a little bit lower. I think it's a little bit lower at the moment,
Right, so just another
last year.
point of remembrance here that
Okay.
Yeah.
the state never, in all my time here, has never fully funded excess cost.
Yeah.
So we wind up, always eating a portion of that.
Yeah, we were up over, we should have, if we based on what was claimed, it would have been up over $2 million,
Yeah.
and we got 1.3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ann.
Yeah, thank you. We got lots of information in our packet on the different grants. So Kevin, did you want to?
I'll summarize it for you.
Yeah.
You have the detail, I had the details shared with you just so you could see, first, the different grant
Right.
types, and then how we allocated those funds. So some of this is repetitive because you've seen it already, but
Right.
at the top of the list, you saw we had a special education stipend of $20,000. So Ann and Andrea worked out that. I think those funds were dedicated to ESY, if I recall. That came in at some point in the summer. It was unexpected, so it was a happy stipend of $20,000. The coronavirus relief funds for fiscal '20, as you recall, we got that grant in several waves over the course of last year. Those funds were primarily dedicated to health and safety PPE.
Yeah,
And so the
supplies.
details are laid out there. Right.
Right.
We also received some additional ESSER funds and then ESSER 2 funds in 2021. That was the 300,000 and change that we are allocating toward a math interventionist at Cider Mill and a part-time social worker at the high school. And then our ARP ESSER grant, that was the large grant that we spoke about several times at previous board meetings. We're conducting a range of activities. Those funds are primarily dedicated to the unfinished learning plans that we have in place for this school year.
Who does the grant writing for us?
It depends. Marianne is the primary grant facilitator, but you'll see when you read through some of those, we're required to develop SMART goals. So depending on the grant area, either Chuck or Kim Zemo or Andrea or I will, it really depends on,
It's really exhausting,
it is.
you know, the amount of work that goes in. No, I mean, it is. It's amazing, the amount of work that goes into getting these grants, and what it takes, you know, to
Yeah,
fulfill the obligations, the requirements. It's just, it's crazy.
right. And then, Ann, question for you. We had talked, and I think, you know, Debbie in previous meetings had asked, you know, was there any remaining FEMA funds? So can you just comment, are there any other buckets of grant money that's still hanging out there, or are we at the end of the road with FEMA and whatever else we were applying for?
We are right currently in the throes of trying to get more money for the first and second quarters of 2022 now, and the last quarter of last year. And it's going to be mainly just salary-related items that we can prove out. They're not anything that we're buying, you know, if we bought masks or did any more protectives, they're not reimbursing that. So we're in contact with them nearly every week, because they keep kicking out more things that we put in to try and get reimbursed. So we're trying to finalize that. We hope to have that done within the next 2-3 weeks. But it's small dollars, it's nothing major.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Right. Okay, well, we're putting the funds to great use, so it's going to have an impact on helping us with the learning, unfinished learning and the support. So it's good news to be able to have the resources
Yes.
to do that. Perfect. Okay. All right, so we're under review and discuss items, the first being a COVID update. And Dr. Smith, you usually
Yep.
take care of that?
I do. So Marie and I are going to do this together. Just a couple of points of information. As I've reported before, I track the daily transmission rates, daily plus, on COVID Act Now. And so I was happy to see today that for Fairfield County, the case rate has declined to 8.7 per 100,000. That's the lowest it's been since August 1st of this year, which is great news. And it had been steadily trending lower after increasing through August. We're holding steady through the month of September, so it looks like we're moving in the right direction again. As you know, also, the State Department of Public Health publishes on Thursdays town-level transmission data. And so for Wilton, and this is, they provide data over a 2-week look back. So the information today that was published had Wilton at 12.1 as an average over the last 2 weeks, new cases per day. And so Wilton has generally been pretty low, you know, certainly compared across the state. And so let's hope those numbers will continue to come down. The last item here, just before I turn it over to Maria, is just, I think you all know this already, but just to say it so we're clear. Recently, the state legislature extended the governor's emergency powers, and the governor also extended a number of executive orders through February 15th, 2022. The one that's probably most pertinent to us is the universal mask mandate.
Yeah.
So that will remain in place unless the governor changes the executive order through February 15th.
I think everybody needs to understand, it's not something we did. It's a mandate from the state that we've got to follow.
Correct.
And I just, you know, okay.
Right. So Maria was just going to update us on vaccine mandates. and she handles all things COVID here in the Wilton Public Schools.
I just have a few very brief updates for you. As Kevin mentioned, I wanted to begin by giving you an update on our compliance with Executive Order 13G, which mandates vaccination for all covered workers in schools, or mandates weekly testing for people who are not vaccinated. Since the last time we gave you an update on our vaccination rates in the district, the rates have increased. We're at 96% of our staff are fully vaccinated or are in line to be fully vaccinated within the next few weeks. So clearly that's a very high percentage. The remaining staff members who are not vaccinated are participating in the weekly testing. We've just completed our second round of that. And, you know, it's really, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Tracy DeAngelis and Erica Cross in our department, who have worked extremely hard to bring us into compliance in a very short period of weeks. We've been working with about 1,000 people when you include all of our staff, vendors, contractors, and other covered workers. So it was a tremendous effort on their part, and we're moving along. So things are in place for that. The other piece that I wanted to update the board about is our volunteer protocols, which essentially mirror Executive Order 13G. The protocols were put in place as we work as a district to try to lift some of the moratoriums that were in place last year. You may recall that we were not able to welcome visitors to our schools because of the pandemic last year. And as we look to try to return to a sense of normalcy in our buildings, to welcome parents back in, continue that partnership, we wanted to do so while also taking reasonable measures to mitigate the potential risk of welcoming visitors back. So we have a protocol in place that requests proof of vaccination when parents visit, but there's also an opportunity for exemptions. There's the opportunity for testing for people who are not vaccinated. So again, it's just a step that we've taken to try to ensure that we can continue welcoming people back while also taking reasonable precautions. So that's been in place now since September 27th as well. And those are really the two updates that I wanted to share this evening, so I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Maria, I have a question, Mandy.
Yeah.
For the volunteer protocols, how far does that extend? So I know that's for parents, but like, if I'm a contractor and I'm going in to change a light in Mrs. Smith's room at Miller Driscoll, do I have to show that?
It depends. We have, the executive order actually extends to people who are not actual employees of the school district, and that's why the executive order lists covered workers, which includes contractors who work more than intermittently in the school district. So if it's a person who's coming in for a one-time repair, then that person is not subject to the order. If it's a person who's coming in more than 4 or 5 times in a year, then that person and the person's employer, they are required to comply with the order. So what we've had to do is actually reach out to all of our contractors, all of our independent contractors, and notify them of the requirements. So if it's someone that's coming in on a regular basis, the person is subject to the order. If it's a person that may be coming in once or twice, then we do have the visitor protocol. It's not just for parents, Mandy, but so then it comes down to if we have a person, let's say, who's delivering something to the Board of Education and is not actually entering into the building where there's any contact with children. If that person is not prepared for some reason because it's the first time to the district and is not actually entering into the building, then we have to make that decision at that point as to whether or not there's further requirement there. But the requirement of vaccination does generally extend to contractors, to independent contractors that come in if they're coming in regularly. And for people that are coming in and having contact with children, parents or otherwise, we do have that expectation in place.
So if I'm coming in to have a meeting with you or Kevin, am I required to show proof of vaccination?
Well, again, visitors are not required to show proof of vaccination. Visitors are being requested to show proof of vaccination or to have a negative test
Sorry, yes,
result.
so am I in that bucket of needing to show something if I'm coming in just for a meeting with, say, you or Kevin?
We are requesting it, because if you think about it, you're having a meeting with us, it's in a school building, it's potentially happening, sometimes we have children in our offices. I think, this it's still a relatively new protocol, so, there may be instances where we have to make decisions about, whether or not we would allow people in if there is no contact with children. The protocol is not intended to prevent people from accessing the buildings or from accessing us. We certainly want to be available. We lifted the moratorium intentionally to try to, invite people in and have them be involved in the schools and have face-to-face meetings. We understand the value of that. So, I think if there's a unique circumstance where a person does not have proof of vaccination and for some reason does not have a test result, but has a need to meet with an administrator, I think we would evaluate that on a case-by-case basis and really try to be reasonable, because the protocol is not in place with the intention of preventing people from accessing schools. We're just trying to take reasonable precautions when we can do so.
No, and I understand that. I'm just trying to make sure the equity doesn't make entire sense to me if I'm going in to change a light bulb in a classroom versus if I'm going in to read a book in a classroom. That's what I'm having a hard time
Right.
understanding.
Right, well, again, if you're going, just to be clear, and I know it's a little confusing, so I apologize if I'm not making it very clear. Contractors that are coming in, first of all, people who are changing light bulbs are employees of the district.
Right, that's a bad example,
So-
just using, if
Yeah.
I'm coming in to do, if I'm not an employee of the district.
Yeah, right. So most of those people would be required to comply with the order. And
But
if
if I'm
they're
coming in
not,
just for one-
then we're, what's that?
If I'm coming in just once, I don't have to comply.
Right. Well, but then you fall into that visitor category, where we are asking visitors for proof of vaccination. So if you're coming in to do a repair, then we would consider you under that umbrella of a person that works for, or is performing some sort of service for the school district. If you're not subject to the order, then you still fall into sort of the category of being a visitor, where it's not mandated by law, but we are requesting it. And if you don't have it, then again, and you don't have proof of testing, then we would have to make that decision. Well, likely in a situation like that, what we would do is have the person return when students aren't there.
So the state law covers people who maybe aren't employed by the Wilton Public Schools but are coming in to do work for
Other
the
contracted
schools.
Yeah.
workers, right.
Yeah, yeah. So there's just to be clear, there's sort of two layers here. The initial layer is the mandate of the executive order, which applies to anyone who is a covered worker. And that covers most people who enter our school. If you don't fall into the covered worker category, then we're still asking essentially everyone else to provide proof of vaccination or a test result. If a person comes to our door and doesn't have either of those, then we really need to assess the necessity of that person coming in during school hours, whether it's something that can be scheduled, whether it's in a back closet where the person has no contact with kids, those kinds of things. So, Andy, does that help clarify it? Because I know it's confusing, and I'm having these conversations every day, so perhaps it's a little clearer to me, but I understand how it's to a person who's pregnant for the first time. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I can't say I agree with it, but it helps clarify the protocol.
Right.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments? COVID, any more updates?
Not on
All right,
COVID.
thank you, Maria, and thank you, Kevin. We're now at the review and discuss Wilton High School NIASK 5-year progress report. And I see Dr. O'Donnell is in the room.
Along with Mr. Keating.
Yes, welcome.
So good evening, and to the Board of Ed, and of course to Dr. Smith. I want to thank you for having a little bit of time spent on our NIASK report here. We received a letter from the commission, and of course NIASK is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. It is our accrediting institution, affectionately known as NIASK, and Lucille has our presentation up. So we received a letter about a week ago, specifically on September 27th, and there were a number of what I would describe as commendations from the commission in this letter. The way they framed it actually were things that they were pleased with, so things that are going well and that we're making progress with. And so as we get ready to share some of this information with you, and I know you already have the letter, some of these, really all of them, what I want to point out, they're very substantive. These are about the work on the portrait of the graduate, which we all participated in, our core values and beliefs, curriculum development in the high school, our relatively new flight and digital literacy programs, our work with the electronic portfolio that we start in the freshman year, and then our plan that we're building for the capstone project. So these are, again, they're very important things that we're working very concertedly to accomplish. So as we get ready to begin, on behalf of the Wilton High School and Brian, who is of course here with me, I want to begin by thanking this Board of Education and its leadership as well, because much of this success and these changes and the progress we're making are due to your support. So from our hearts, on behalf of the Wilton High School faculty, we want to thank you. And I also want to send out a special recognition to the faculty because they engage in this process. It's a very in-depth self-study that Brian's going to talk about. They've been working on the progress we've been making for 6 years at this point. They will continue to work on this for the next 4 years. And we'll show you tonight just some of the progress that we've made, so thank you to our faculty. Brian is going to talk a little bit about the association, just a little bit of background, because some of you, it may be relatively new to you, and for others it'll be a refresher. We'll talk very briefly about some of these commendations, and then we'll discuss next steps. So, Brian, what would you like this Board of Education to know about NIASK?
Thank you very much. There are just a few things, and Lucille, you certainly can scroll through if possible, so you can refer to what's on the board as well. So just a few things to give you the background. New England Association of Schools and Colleges is, like Dr. O'Donnell said, that organization that provides accreditation for over 1,500 schools in New England, either independent, private, or public schools, also including, as it mentions in its title, colleges. It's an independent, voluntary, member-oriented organization that really engages in peer review. So it's got a governing body, but it also is comprised of people who go out on visits, who are teachers and administrators in districts. Again, peer review is at the crux of what NIASK does. And Dr. O'Donnell already mentioned it, but there are some things that are the key components of the New England Association of Schools and Colleges experience, and the most valuable is that each school is asked to conduct a deep self-reflection to see where they consider themselves to be in terms of all that is expected of a school of excellence. Then the visiting team conducts the peer assessment in a visit that physically lasts for 4 days, but as we'll see, the cycle lasts for 10 years, and it just repeats. And then there's continual follow-up, which we'll refer to in a little bit, but it is an ongoing partnership to support and propel school districts. So to have so many commendations coming from this organization is really quite an exceptional feat. So just a visual for you, again, not really adding too much new to what was just put in the last bullets on the previous screen, but when a school enters into the cycle, the first step is to engage in self-reflection, and that is not just with the staff, but that's also with the community at large. The visiting team spends time getting to know the school and the community. An actual 4-day visit has been the norm in the past, and that is then, there's follow-up reports and letters that come over the next few years, and that is done in good faith to show that the NIASK group is supporting those efforts that a community and a school is trying to achieve. And so the last 10 years, the last decade, the standards have focused on what you see on the board there. Schools' core values, beliefs, learning expectations, those are similar terms, ones that you're quite familiar with. There's also focus on curriculum, instruction, assessment in general, how the school culture is, the leadership in the school and the community, resources, both school-based and community-based. So those are the general areas and standards that are measured by NIASK. And when we were talking about the cycle, Wilton High School most recently had these, I guess you could call them milestones for the last visit. So back in 2016, there was a visiting team that Wilton High School hosted. In 2018, after the visit, there was a 2-year report, progress report, that it was meant to let everybody in the Wilton community know what progress was being made on the recommendations that the visiting team put into place and suggested. We recently received, last year, March 2021, the 5-year progress update, and that's what's captured in some of the data that we have for you tonight. And just so that you understand how that cycle continues, and like Dr. O'Donnell said, coming up shortly in just 4 years, we kick off the next cycle. So in the fall of 2025, we will jump into a cycle that's slightly different than what it's been from the past decade, but not terribly different. A lot of different labels and names, but still looking at a lot of the same aspects and standards of schools.
So this next slide, I'm going to give you just a couple seconds to take a look at that and digest it a little bit, and then I'll speak to it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's a reading test.
Somebody on the Zoom should mute their mics again if they can too. We're getting, oh, thanks. So this screen depicts the progress that we have made since the from the 2-year report to the 5-year report. So you could see that when we reported it in 2 years, we had 1 recommendation completed. We now have 21 of them completed. There were 30 that were in progress, now 16 because more of them are completed. We had 5 that were planned for the future. All of those now are either in progress or completed. And there was 1 we had taken no action on that is now in progress. So, you know, we have always with NIASK, we've taken a really, really good hard look in the mirror. We have a history at the high school of being hard on ourselves in terms of own self-evaluation. And so, you know, this progress is certainly very genuine. We only report it as completed if it is completed. Many of these, I would point out, you know, will remain in progress certainly over the next 4 years. Curriculum development is an example. I mean, these are living, breathing documents that you're always developing. So incrementally, we're certainly making very, very positive progress, as you can see between the 2-year and the 5-year progress report. Next slide. And then some of the things that, I mean, you've seen it, so we won't go too in depth, but the work that this community did with the portrait of the graduate, and what we want to emphasize here is just the broad stakeholder representation. You know, we remember those evenings in the Zellner Gallery with community members and the business community and parents and students and administrators. It was a very robust process, and we're really rolling that out now at the high school. Making that part of what drives curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and really is the, you know, the intellectual underpinning of what we're trying to do when we make decisions. Also, the freshman orientation program was cited. That's the flight program for freshmen, and that has been a program through which you can see here we reinforce the core values, the beliefs, but also, next slide. So some of the work that's ongoing right now for our freshmen in this very LLC, including today, the students are developing their electronic portfolio. So they have a portfolio in which they will upload passion projects, points of pride, and this electronic portfolio is something that they'll work on throughout their time at the high school. This is all new, but the freshmen have started it, particularly with the class of 2023. And so they're working on ultimately developing this portfolio and then turning it into some type of passion project, culminating in a capstone project in the senior year. So we're very happy with that project right now and the way it's progressing. It is new to us. Many school districts wrestled with how to do it, but I think we've defined a good way to do it, and the electronic portfolio is our platform. 612 articulation through the IETs and specifically the program days. And then Dr. Smith actually alluded to this a little bit earlier, the CES training on the math data teams, which is ongoing right now to try to address math performance at the high school and beyond. Next slide.
And some other highlights, NIASK gave commendations about the use of data from the SAT and PSAT, and as we have mentioned, that is something that we are continuing to find value in and implement. Also, the development of the Genesis program received high commendations, especially paying attention to those learners that might not thrive in the typical environment and making allowance for that in a school district and a school. Also having engagement with outside resources. Orton Gillingham and Yale's Ruler program are the ones that were highlighted by NIASK. Also, our WHS Collaborative Center for High Needs Students was, the praise was sung of that. And next slide. Very much in line with Genesis and our Collaborative Center, the Community Steps program, and the multiple supports that are given to students that are in that program. Also the focus of commendations. Very tightly aligned with our data teams, the use of our instructional effectiveness teams for department and small group work was seen as something that is a strength. And the partnering, really, and inclusion of the Student Government Executive Board with most school decisions was something that NIASK found to be quite a strength of Wilton High School.
So looking forward, we were actually one of the last schools in the last decennial evaluation process, and now there is a new process in place. So we envision, when we engage in the next decennial process, these will be the standards. It'll be learning culture, student learning, professional practices, learning support, and learning resources. And what I believe what the association has done is they've as Brian said, this used to be a 4-day process. They arrived on a Sunday. They were here part of Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They're now more shortened visits along the lines of a consultancy. So we expect that will be the process when we engage in the next decennial cycle. And then to talk just a little bit of what that'll look like and when it will take place on the next slide. So there's always, really the way it works is there will be a 7-year report. So we'll be reporting back in a couple of years. And that is often referenced as the pre-self study for the next cycle. And we'll have an informational meeting about the new process. We're already familiar with it because we've already sent educators from our school out to do, accreditation processes in other schools. And then we'll have the self-reflection, the collaboration piece, 25, 26, and we would anticipate a decennial visit in the fall of 2028 by a smaller group of educators. It's not as big of a group and/or process as it has been in previous years that we've worked with in our careers. So, that's where we're heading. The most important thing I think about this process was that slide with the progress that we're making. And, we want to work on as many of those and move them from in progress to completed and continue the work. And again, the work that this faculty is doing on all of these areas is truly remarkable. I think Mr. Hemmerly talked about all the things that, the school is trying to do during our last board meeting, which was a very good observation. This is further ongoing work, but it's so important in the areas of curriculum, instruction, assessment, and school community and culture. So. Thank you again for your support. We totally appreciate everything you do on behalf of our high school and our Wilton High School Warrior students.
Are there different levels of accreditation, or is it yes or no?
Yes or no?
It's just yes or no?
Correct.
Because in reading the letter.
We are fully accredited again, which would come as no surprise at this board. You can be put on what might be described as probation, and that can happen.
No, because my thought is, in reading the letter and all the comments from them, we would have to be at the top tier. If there were tiers, we'd have to be at the very top.
I would agree, although Dr. O'Donnell's correct, there is no tiered ranking. There are plenty of schools, and the letters are public documents, NIASK releases them as public documents. There are plenty of schools that have deficiencies listed.
Yeah.
And to see that this is a letter that has commendations.
Yeah, it was
and that's it.
remarkable to
It
read
speaks
everything,
volumes.
Oh, yeah.
just to go through it, and everything that's there in that letter, they looked at and commented on. It's just absolutely remarkable. Congratulations to you guys and to the staff, to the faculty.
Thank you.
And everybody who makes the high school work, because it really is a remarkable, I mean, this is a public document, so the public can see this, it's available to them. And I don't know have we posted this on our website, or will it be posted?
It can be posted, yeah.
I think we should post it.
Put it on the website.
On the website, I really do, on the high school
Agreed.
website, so that the public can see
Mhm.
what's going on.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the
We're-
comments. I think-
we shared it yesterday, Tuesday, with the instructional leadership team.
Yeah.
We sent it out to the whole faculty, but we have a faculty meeting next Wednesday. We're gonna unpack it for them a bit, and then absolutely, we'll put it on the website and send it out on Schoology.
Yeah, I think so. I would really encourage everyone to read it. And you get just an incredible picture of what's going on at the high school in doing so. And it's remarkable. Kudos.
Yeah, it's
Thank
a
you.
very impressive, positive list, which is
Yeah.
quite remarkable. There's at least 36 positive commendations,
Yeah.
which has got to be some sort of a record. I have a couple of questions, and I just wonder, because there's so much information in here, some of which the board's familiar with. We know about the portrait of the graduate, for example. But there are a couple of other things that are mentioned, and I don't want to go into it tonight, but I just wondered if you could either come back and give us a short overview of some of what you mean. There was a commendation, for instance, for the English Social Studies interdepartmental argumentative project, writing project. So, just kind of an overview of that. And the capstone project, we just need to know perhaps a little bit more about that. Not tonight, but, these would make little good, snippets for sometime during our board meetings.
Sure.
You mentioned the Collaborative Center and something called Performance Matters. So there's some detail in here that maybe just either, a briefing to us or even a short presentation might be helpful. And then my last question would be the recommendations that you're working on. Just wondered if there's a way of highlighting, like, what were the major ones that, that they made, and which were the ones that were the heaviest lift?
Some of the ones that we cited on the slides were some of the complex ones of which we're
Okay.
proud.
Okay.
The document that I have in front of me is 48 pages long with all of the information.
Oh, we didn't
So
get that.
I think that
That's okay.
I think that we
Just
could, I think that we can provide you with some of the more detailed information you're asking for, and/or get back to you with some of the other points of pride, areas that are
Yeah, it's just so
substantive
we're
and-
more informed. But
Sure.
it's just such fascinating, important work, and so many layers of complexity and detail. And it kind of points to what a comprehensive organism a high school is. So all the moving parts, it's kind of neat to see it all. So thank you.
Well done.
Other questions, comments?
Well done.
Yes, thank you both.
Thank
And
you.
the entire faculty, of course, and the kids, and the parents, and everyone who goes into making such an excellent high school. So thank you. Okay. All right, now we'll talk enrollment numbers. There is a one-pager in here. Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Smith, go
So
ahead.
October 1 is always an important day for public schools here in Connecticut, because that's the day we lock in enrollment, and that's the number, despite the fact that it changes daily, that's the number that gets reported to the state, that's used for all of the state grant purposes, as well as locally, we use that to forecast the next budget season off of, so it's an important number. In terms of where we are today, not surprisingly, we have exceeded projections that was anticipated, just given the what we saw last year through the pandemic with people, families withholding kids from school, as well as the booming housing market here. So our total enrollment district-wide is 3,758 students. In classrooms, K-12, we have 3,669 students. We have 58 students in our preschool, 21 students who are outplaced, and another 10 who are participating in community steps. So all combined, that's 3,758.
What was that breakdown again? 58 in preschool, and what was the other two?
21 outplaced, and then 10 in the community steps program. And just
Oh, I
we-
see, here it is.
Yeah, it's right at the bottom. We include the Genesis students in the high school count or the middle school count, wherever they are, because they'll go back and forth. In terms of the projections, so we're 120 students beyond Ellen's projection for K-12 students. I think there was a cell error. That's why I didn't, when I just went back to look at that. Yeah. We are, in terms of total enrollment, I went back and looked at her 2019 projections. You remember, she built the 2020 projections off of last year's actuals, and so we just figured, because there were so many kids homeschooled or enrolled in private school, that they were depressed. So her projections for 2019 were 3,674, so we're 84 students beyond that projection. I went back and looked at, some of you, Laura and Glenn especially, you were on the board some years ago when we commissioned Mylone and McBroom to do a demographic study. And we're going to be using Mylone and McBroom again to do a demographic study. When I started, I figured I'd wanted to do that about every 3 years or so. The pandemic got in the way last year. But when Mylone reports, they come in and they do a comprehensive look. So they look at all of the housing data, they look at cohort survival rates. They look at kind of broad shifts, and then they will model out 3 forecasts: a low forecast, a medium forecast, and a high forecast. And so I went back. They did that for us in 2015, and then again in 2017. And so we exceeded all of the projections based on the numbers we have today. The high projection from 2015 actually matches our current number, but everywhere else we exceeded those projections. So, the net of that is the pandemic's been good for enrollment, and while we're still long-term experiencing an enrollment decline, the curve isn't bending nearly as far as we were anticipating even a few years ago, and it looks to me we are, at the point, the last couple of classes that are well over 300 here at the high school, we're bringing in classes of 250, 260. So I think what we're seeing, if those, the new cohorts remain the same, a leveling off across the district. And that certainly, as we're planning budgets and trying to plan for the future, will, if those numbers remain stable, that'll help with the longer term forecasting. So we sent our numbers to Mylone, and they'll come back to us with a project timeline. It usually takes 4 weeks or so for them to conduct their study, so we're anticipating, fingers crossed, we'll have a full report from them on November 4th. If not, then the 2nd November meeting, I would expect to have them here to provide their update.
Okay. Great. That's good news.
It is good news.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they say about, or try to translate the real estate market into something.
Yeah.
It's baffling.
Well, also just makes me so grateful that we did Mill Driscoll. Those weren't, look at where all the.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you see in the number, we've had, significant influx in our K-1. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm worried about empty rooms.
You can't find an empty room at Miller Driscoll. You couldn't before, but you can't now. There was never an empty room.
Other questions, comments?
No, it's good. You look at K1 through 2, those students will flow through the system. We hope to stay with us, and they're all well above what we projected. So it's great.
Okay. There's review and discuss. One more item. Superintendent's goals.
Okay, so I provided to you the goals that I'm pursuing this year. These are, as you know, I typically try to categorize my goals into 4 areas: whole child, student outcomes, fiscal accountability, and then teaching and learning. Last year, for very obvious reasons, I added COVID-19 as an area. And so what I've laid out for you, certainly, what I'm aiming to accomplish in the short term is reflective of the board's goals. But first and foremost, in terms of health and safety, continuing to manage this COVID-19 environment. While things are looking good, we are not out of the COVID-19 environment. And so, as you just heard earlier, there's still quite a number of logistical health and safety considerations that we have to continue to manage on a day-to-day basis. So we're involved in that. With respect to a goal around whole child, again, typically here, we as a district focus on the social emotional well-being of children and family student connectedness or student connectedness with teachers. And so we're using the Panorama survey that we used a year ago. And so we have some initial data, working with Kim on setting a target here. We've set a goal of trying to hit at least 75% on the total relationship score. So that's a measure, that's an aggregate measure on the Panorama survey. Within that, there are specific, activities that we're focusing on. So
Could we get a copy of that survey?
sure.
Panorama is a company that's, as you may know, has been in the news over the last week or so. Not in a very positive way, but I'm curious about it.
Sure. We have used them now. I think this last year might have been the first year we used their survey tool to assess student connectedness and SEL measures.
Well, they're making news, so I'm just curious about it.
I haven't seen it, so you have to send it to me. So under that, the activities that we're focusing on, again, this is not new work for us. It's a continuation of work that's been underway for a while, but really focusing on connection, so helping students feel connected to each other, helping teachers and students feel connected, and then always engaging in activities where we help students identify when they need to, where they can go for help. So those form the basis of the plan around that goal. We've talked quite a bit about student outcome data, certainly looking at reflecting back on the workshop that Chuck provided on accelerated learning and looking at the learning data we have in place. I'm looking to achieve at least a district average of 85% of students meeting or exceeding goal in the English language arts. So I just note for you, that's a district average, which I think makes sense for me at this level. Similarly, in mathematics, that goal is reflective of what you're seeing across the buildings, and that's shooting for about 80% of students meeting or exceeding goals. And then I've also written a goal of narrowing the achievement gap between special education and non-special education students by at least 5 percentage points. And so my thinking there, that gap is substantial here in Wilton. And so if we can get it at least 5 points over the next several years, then we will dramatically close the gap in that time.
That's reported among other districts in the DERG.
Sure.
I don't remember or recall that we've ever, or when we ever looked at how we compared to other districts.
I can't comment off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So I can go back and look at 2019 data. That would be the most recent comparative
Because
data.
I seem to think that we really kind of lagged behind.
We did. I mean, that was
Yeah.
my memory.
Our gap
Yeah.
was wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of, how many children do we have compared to other districts?
Yeah, so it's a great question.
Number of-
Yeah, and our incidence rate is higher. And so again, I'm not prepared to give you exact numbers tonight, and I can
Well, I
provide
think
that to you.
we're fairly favorable with retaining. As a percent, we're right in line with that.
I wouldn't say that. I actually think and I don't know,
Has it changed then? Because
Yeah, 'cause
our incidence
That was
rate
my
was
memory.
creeping up over the last several years.
all right.
Yeah, so why don't I'll work with Andrea
Yeah.
I'll just, rather than conjecture about
Yeah,
it,
sure.
we can just
Yeah.
look at
Yeah,
actual
absolutely.
numbers.
Because the last time we were looking at the difference with other
Right.
schools, it was like before Debbie was on the board. I mean, I remember.
Mhm.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while
Yeah.
that we've looked at that, and
All right, good question then.
So we'll go back to 20, if I have 2020 data, I'll get you whatever we have.
Sure.
whatever we put our hands on. And then with respect to teaching and learning, again here, just tried to capture, particular to-dos and outcomes. And so, as you already know, as a system, really trying to focus as much as humanly possible on addressing unfinished learning with our kids. That is the key priority for us. So you heard, quick summary a little bit ago about the action steps that are underway or planned. And so my work this year is really working with Chuck and Andrea through the principals to ensure that these pieces are in place and that the model we're using is functioning optimally and we're seeing good outcomes with kids. And then obviously within that too, we have some work around the Portrait of the Graduate implementation plan. So you've seen some of that already with Fran, but using this year as an awareness year, using time to write I can statements and learning targets, and then really rolling forward in the next couple of years with mapping into the curriculum and starting to plan and measure outcomes. And then some other priority areas. One of the my goal, just in working with all of you, is to ensure you get material in a timely way. So we've set a goal in my office that you'll have materials in advance, well in advance, so you too can be prepared to come to those meetings. It's my intention this fall to schedule a long-range planning event so we can go back and review Portrait of the Graduate with that group of stakeholders that we engaged pre-pandemic. As you know, the Middlebrook staff continues to labor over some alternative schedules, so that work will continue. One of the board's goals for me was also to work on promoting assured experiences across teams, both at Middlebrook and Souder Mill. We've had some conversation about that over the last couple of years, and so working with Jen and Jory and their teams to really understand what the core activities are, what the core experiences should be, and then looking for some alignment. That's work that'll take place this year. I updated the board a week ago. We are looking for a new site for Genesis that'll unfold here in the next couple of months. Open choice is out there, and I'll have to at some point come with a recommendation for this board, and you'll have to deliberate about whether or not Wilton would choose to participate in open choice. So that's
Is open choice being you can take any class you want? Is that what
open choice, if you recall, is it's a program that enables students from urban centers to come and participate in the education programs in suburban settings.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the law changed a year ago
Yeah.
to expand the sending districts to include Danbury and Norwalk. I'm thrilled that we're able to relaunch the Zero Waste Initiative this year, so that's work is underway. We're also relaunching the Let Grow project, so all of that work around play in our primary schools that we get very excited about. We're happy to re-engage in that. And then, we tied to Portrait of the Graduate, we had begun some work pre-pandemic developing transdisciplinary curricular units. And so, again, thinking about how kids learn best and trying to, overtly make better connections across disciplines through high interest, high engagement activities. That's some work that's on my list this year.
Under student outcomes, I think you had talked to the board about presenting us data on a pretty regular basis.
Yes.
So I just think that's a pretty important goal, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at about 6-week intervals.
You had said
Yeah.
that, so I think that's just worth writing down, that's all. Okay, all right, and then, as the board knows, we need to start scheduling, sort of superintendent evaluation, check-in kind of workshops. So we'll do that as well.
Great.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay. Action items. All right, the logo. That's great. All right, so Dr. Smith, go
Yes,
ahead.
so nothing new here. As you know, we have revised the logo We have established a color, established a font. And so tonight, I am asking the board for a motion to approve the changes to our logo, and we can put this to bed.
So moved. Any questions, comments?
Yep, let's do
I
it.
have one question, but it's an easy
Oh,
one.
I know.
Does all the athletic, everything that's existing, that doesn't, like, is there a time frame that it has to get like this, or is it just over time?
Yeah, it'll happen over time. So,
Okay.
I mean,
There's
like the
nothing-
uniforms are on a replacement cycle, and where we
Right.
can, we'll change. We've already started
So
to.
it's not like we have to change everything to match this?
No, I think we have to be reasonable about it.
Okay, perfect, that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
There's-
people were joking about the fields, right?
Well, I mean, that's what I kept
fields.
hearing.
They were like, are you gonna spend money and fix?
No.
Right, that's why I just
No.
wanted to make sure, that there wasn't like a time frame.
We can buy some chalk paint if we
Yeah.
need to.
All right, well.
Well, and I think the board owes a great debt of gratitude to our graphic artist,
Dave Cody.
Dave Cody,
Yeah.
who developed this for us and put a lot of time and effort into it. And so thank him
I will do.
on behalf of the board, because it really,
J.R. Sherman, I know he's been involved.
Yeah, JR is wonderful.
Yeah.
yeah, it really is long overdue. It
And
makes a
send
lot of
them a
sense.
thank you card in these colors, in
Yeah.
these fonts.
Yeah.
With the 3D.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's wonderful
Yeah.
to get this on, all together in such a
Yeah. Clean it up.
professionally done manner. This
Yeah.
is great.
Clean it up.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the revised logos,
Oh, Jen moved.
including the font, the athletic font, and the color.
Jen moved already.
You already did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
I'll second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right. Congratulations to everybody who worked on that, and
Yeah.
this is great.
My daughter marched in, Cider Mill and her new logo, Not Hill shirt this morning,
Super.
the walkathon.
Exciting. Yeah? Good. All right, let me see, future business, all right. We have canceled the Thursday, October 21st meeting because Dr. Smith will be
Out of town.
receiving the award that we talked about earlier. And our next meeting will be Thursday, November 4th. Then there's the November and December meetings there. All right, comments from the public. Lucille, did we get any? Okay. All right, we finished the agenda. Any other burning issues? All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good, long weekend.
Panorama is owned by Merrick Garland's daughter's husband.
I'm sorry, what's on?